He was 7 when his mother left him at the gate. No goodbye. No promise to return. Just a trembling hand that pushed him toward the iron doors of the orphanage and the sound of rain hitting the stone floor behind him. His name was Ayaan, and that was the day he stopped believing in forever. Inside, the walls of St. Mary's Orphanage were cold and peeling. The windows cried with the same rain that now soaked through his shoes. Ayaan didn't cry, he didn't scream. He just stood, small and silent, his bag clutched like a shield. But across the dimly lit hall, a little girl watched him. She was 5, fragile-looking, with hair tied in loose braids and a softness in her eyes that the world hadn't taken from her yet. Her name was Zoya, she had been there for over a year. After the fire took her parents, she had become one of the quiet ones, a child who rarely spoke, who flinched at sudden sounds, who looked for light in faces before she ever trusted words. When she saw Ayaan that night, she didn't know why, but something in her chest stirred. Maybe it was the way he stood still, refusing to cry. Or maybe it was the kind of silence she knew too well. At dinner, Ayaan sat alone, staring at the watery dal on his plate. He hadn't eaten since morning. Zoya, seated a few places away, quietly slipped off her bench, walked to him, and placed half her roti on his tray. She didn't say anything. He didn't thank her. But that night they sat side by side in the bunk room, not talking, just breathing in each other's quiet. From then on, they became each other's only comfort. They played together in the backyard, hiding from the older boys who bullied the smaller kids. They shared stories some made up, some too real for their age. At night, Ayaan would whisper dreams of building a house one day, a place with soft pillows, warm food, and people who never left. Zoya always smiled and said, "And I'll plant flowers in every room, pink ones." For a while, they made the orphanage feel like a home, at least to each other. But the system has a way of breaking even the strongest bonds. When Ayaan turned 16, a kind couple from Lahore came to adopt him. He didn't resist, he wanted a family. But when he turned to hug Zoya goodbye, she didn't cry or hold on. She simply tied a pink thread around his wrist and whispered, "So you don't forget me." He didn't. Years passed. Life moved on as it always does. Ayaan's adoptive parents gave him stability and education, but their love, though kind, was careful, reserved. He studied social sciences, drawn to the wounds people carried. He worked part-time jobs, volunteered in shelters, and tried to drown the emptiness with purpose. But he never took off that faded pink bracelet. Zoya, meanwhile, aged out of the orphanage without fanfare. No one came for her. No one called. At 18, she packed her meager belongings and stepped into a world that didn't even notice her arrival. She worked as a nanny, then a school assistant. She rented small rooms in overcrowded buildings and kept a journal filled with drawings of the house she once dreamed of, with Ayaan, a house full of children and flowers. They didn't speak, didn't meet, but neither forgot. It was a humid afternoon when fate finally intervened. Anne was conducting a seminar on mental health for underprivileged educators in Rawalpindi. It was a modest setup, a small schoolroom, some chalk, and a lot of tired teachers. And there she was, Zoya, sitting in the third row, notebook in hand, eyes locked on him as though she was still that 5-year-old girl waiting at the door of St. Mary's. For a moment, he forgot what he was supposed to say. He just looked at her. She blinked. And then she smiled, soft and real and familiar. That evening they sat at the old roadside chai stall near the orphanage. The same spot where they used to dream about a different life. She asked, "Do you still wear it?" He rolled up his sleeve and showed her. The thread was still there, pale and worn thin. They laughed quietly, like they used to, before the world had pulled them apart. From that night, something shifted. They started meeting more often, sharing ideas, memories, pain, and then the old promise resurfaced, the dream of building a home, not a charity, not a government-run facility, but a real home, one where no child felt left behind, one where silence didn't mean loneliness. where meals were shared, stories were told, and pink flowers bloomed in the windows. They started small, pooling savings, contacting NGOs, begging sponsors for donations. Ayaan worked 3 jobs. Zoya taught during the day and ran planning meetings at night. Some days they were full of hope. Other days they felt crushed under the weight of reality. There were times Zoya broke down, saying maybe we're just dreamers. Maybe this world doesn't have room for people like us. But Ayaan would hold her hand and say, it didn't have room for us either, and yet we're still here. 4. Years later, they stood outside the yellow gates of their dreamgar, the House of Hope. It wasn't huge, but it was warm. Painted in bright colors, the walls were lined with handprints of children who now called it home. Zoya planted flowers in every room, just like she promised. And Ayaan made sure every child was hugged every day, just like he once needed. They didn't just house children. They nurtured them. Broken kids, abandoned girls, runaway boys. Each one entered their gates with eyes full of fear. But slowly, they learned to laugh again. One night during monsoon rains, a boy arrived, alone, dripping wet. Clutching a small plastic bag, Zoya knelt beside him and asked, "What's your name, Beta?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the ground. Ayaan and came out with a blanket and a plate of food. He wrapped it around the boy's shoulders and said softly, "You don't have to talk yet, but you're safe now. And you're not alone, The boy slowly looked up. His eyes were filled with the same silent pain Ayaan once carried. And in that moment, Zoya's heart broke and healed all over again. They had come full circle. The boy joined the family, not by blood but by belonging. The cycle of love interrupted in their own childhood had finally been restored. If you've ever felt lost, forgotten, or broken. If you've ever believed that pain has the power to shape something beautiful, let this story stay with you. Because Ayaan and Zoya didn't just build a home. They built a beginning for themselves and for every child who still waits at a gate, hoping for someone to stay. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of what hope looks like, and subscribe to Everyday Grace Stories. Sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to give up to change everything.